Hello and welcome to today's UK Column News. It's Monday the 27th of April, just after 1 o'clock, and I'm your host, Mike Robinson. On my own in the studio today, weather in Plymouth this morning was very pleasant. It started to get cold and cloudy now. Round about the country, it looks a bit of a mixed picture as well, everything from sunshine to snow last night, apparently. So mixed picture around the country, and a mixed picture in the news as well. I suppose we can't do anything but start with this article from the Mail. Over 75, sign here if you're ready for death. GPs to ask all older patients if they'll agree to a do not resuscitate order. Now, of course, this shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody. This has been absolutely on the cards for a number of years now. And really the lack of traction in Parliament for a euthanasia bill being driven by Lord Faulkner and others really hasn't got the traction that they wanted, and so it looks like they're taking another approach. So what are they saying here? That new NHS guidelines are going to urge GPs to draw up end-of-life plans for over 75s, and it's also going to apply to younger patients if they've got serious conditions, for example, cancer. Well, it's being described by the Mail here as extraordinary new guidance. I don't think it's extraordinary at all. And one of the points that they make towards the end of this article is that nurses are warning that the Liverpool Care Pathway, which was supposed to have been abandoned because it had got such bad publicity, in fact hasn't been abandoned. It was just renamed and continues. So this is a pretty significant article. As usual, the language from the quotes in the article itself are very mild. Roy Lilly, a health policy analyst and former NHS Trust chairman, told the Mail, it will give some older people the impression that no one wants to bother with them. It looks as though they're being told, you're old. How do you want to die because you're in the way? And of course, that's exactly the message that has been promoted by the government for a number of years now, and not just by the government, by some others as well. Now, we published an article in 2011 called Exploring Euthanasia, Government Destruction of the NHS, and really we did what nobody's allowed to do. Of course, we mentioned Germany in the 1930s because, of course, they had their Action T4 programme, but the point we were making here was how that programme began, because although that ended up as a euthanasia programme, it was at the beginning named the Charitable Foundation for Cure and Institutional Care, and we were basically comparing that to the National Institute for Clinical Excellence, and perhaps some similarities into where the NHS management are going. And we just reminded people that to reassure, well, I'll just quote a little bit from the last paragraph of this, to reassure the German people about T4, the German government carried out a campaign of propaganda to change public opinion to be in favour of euthanasia. Leaflets were produced, posters and short films pointing out the costs of maintaining asylums for the incurably ill and insane, until gradually the practice became more and more widespread. Recent research based on files recovered after 1990 give a figure of at least 200,000 physically or mentally handicapped people who were killed by medication, starvation, or gas chambers between 1939 and 45 under that programme. Similar type of thing going on, in my opinion. Okay, last week we mentioned this article from the Mises Institute, and they were talking about the continuing attack on cash, and this time they were talking about JP Morgan Chase, and they were saying that there was a new policy from Chase restricting borrowers from using cash to make payments on credit cards, mortgages, equity lines and car loans, and they were also prohibiting the storage of cash in safety deposit boxes. Well, there's an article out today or over the weekend from Switzerland. It's not in English, so you won't be able to read it directly, but it is pointing out that banks in Switzerland are beginning to run negative interest rates, and maybe this gives a clue as to why people are not going to be permitted to store cash in safety deposit boxes, because of course the banks don't make too much money on that. So this article here pointing out negative interest rates in Switzerland, and therefore people are being restricted from removing cash from their accounts in Switzerland. And they're pointing out that this particularly applies to pension funds, and it's actually costing pension funds quite a lot of money to hold cash in a bank account at the moment. So the war on cash continues, but there doesn't seem to be any restriction on cash if you are a political party, because all three of the political parties have been receiving donations from hedge funds. And this is this article here from Schools Week talking about two leading hedge fund managers having donated to David Laws, the Lib Dem. Well, in fact, the Lib Dems have received £70,000 in donations for the election from hedge funds, £71,000 to the Conservative Party. Labour have taken less than the others, but they've still taken £12,000 from these two. And this is from Harris Foundation, who's Lord Philip Harris from Peckham, and he targeted Conservative candidates wanting to hold onto seats in marginal constituencies. And then there's also John Wood, director of privately owned hedge fund SRM Advisors, who has given £50,000 to Nicky Morgan's campaign in an attempt to help her retain her vulnerable Loughborough seat. So no corruption there, no big money going into candidates in an effort to swing the election. It's really difficult for independent candidates to deal with this because, of course, all this big money going into the mainstream candidates, they really have no chance. They get no opportunity on the mainstream press to present their arguments. And although I've seen a couple of independents managing to get onto the hustings tables, it's quite a rare thing, actually, for independents to be able to speak from the tables with the other mainstream candidates. So I would say that this just more evidence of corruption within the electoral process, and it really should be banned. Okay, this article here from the Complete University Guide, they're talking about the fact that class sizes at universities are falling. That's perhaps not a surprise, bearing in mind the £9,000 a year fees that people are having to pay. But the article, when it appeared in the mainstream press, was really being presented as an attempt to encourage people to go to university, because they're basically saying that student satisfaction has also increased alongside this, because with less students being there, in fact, universities are also investing in better facilities. So I think this is really this article. The article as it appeared in the mainstream press, as opposed to what the Complete University Guide is saying, really promoting, they've highlighted a couple of features in an effort to promote universities to people and get people resubscribing to their £9,000 a year debt, plus of course living expenses. But anyway, an interesting little fact anyway, that the fees are having the desired effect. Now, last week we mentioned the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Mark Anderson on with us on Wednesday talking about this, and we mentioned the fact that there was going to be a fast track, an attempt to give President Obama the power to go and make his deal with the free traders without actual congressional oversight. In other words, what was going to happen is that he is going to arrive to Congress with a deal done and present it to Congress. Well, they actually won't even get to see the full deal. They're just going to have to rubber stamp it. But anyway, a Senate Select Committee, this is the House Ways and Means Committee, has voted 25-13 to let this pass. So this is the first stage in Obama winning his fast track permission. So they now, what was really interesting about this vote was that it was the Republican Party which voted for it. The Democratic Party, which is Obama's party, of course, voted en masse against this, and actually the Democratic Party absolutely coming out against Obama at every opportunity at the moment, because they have finally worked out what he is and what he represents. But in the meantime, Obama very critical of anybody that happens to criticize his actions on the TPP. He is saying that any critics of TPP don't know what they're talking about. He's saying that they're dishonest, that they're playing to fundraisers and so on. And he was particularly critical of Elizabeth Warren, who's the senator who's been particularly driving efforts to bring back Glass-Steagall in the United States, which is the splitting up of the commercial and investment banks. And then Obama really getting pretty angry about this, continuing to compare. He's comparing people to anybody that criticizes this whole thing to Sarah Palin, so he's clearly got his back against the wall, but with the criticism. But nonetheless, he did manage to get this through the Senate, but only with the support of Republicans. Okay, advert time again. Of course, this Friday, we've got this common law event in Nottingham. Please get along to Ye Olde Trip to Jerusalem pub in Nottingham, where everybody is meeting. Tom Crawford, who is fighting the banks in order to retain ownership of his property, having successfully paid off a mortgage, although the bank claims that he didn't because they changed its mortgage terms without telling him, is in court on the same day. So that's going to be a very interesting day, a very interesting event. Anything could happen. Do get along to it if you can. And just a reminder that the following day, also in Nottingham at the Savoy Cinema, is going to be another pre-release showing of The Great British Mortgage Swindle. So if you haven't seen this, any of the pre-release versions of this, please go along and support that if you can. And also, please don't forget that we have our own little video on Tom Crawford and also the fact of the corruption of court documents and the court procedure rules. Guy Taylor taking a starring role in that as well. Do go and have a look at that YouTube link, and please promote this as far and wide as possible. And I also would like to, sorry, apologize for that, pressed the wrong button. Just want to show the AV6 video to give me a breather, and we'll be back in about a minute or so.
So I've been watching and watching and watching, and 9/11 was just an incredible mind control event. You know, it was apparent to me then, as it is today, that people are literally mind controlled, that they're not actually thinking for themselves. Most of us are simply regurgitating.
We live in a bubble, and a lot of times, until you remove yourself from that bubble, you don't even know you're living in a bubble, in a kind of an information prison in the West.
But these guys have got a lot of money, and we complain about McDonald's and all that sort of thing. Do you know why they've got so much money? Because we fucking buy their shit. So it's time to stop it. People say to me, where do we go? What's the first step? Stop supporting the companies that don't give a shit.
Be who you are. Don't police your thoughts, and don't police your expression. Express yourself, but work for something positive. Express yourself in a positive way, Create a better world because you're in it. Now, what is your legacy that you leave behind? Is the world better because you were here, or is it worse because you were here, or did you just not participate? Because you have to participate, you really do.
Okay, now, just before I go on, John is not here today. He's busy doing other things. But I just wanted to offer my thanks because John has been a spectacular help over the last week and a half while Nick has been off sick. Actually, he's gone beyond the call of duty, actually, in helping us. So I just wanted to pass on my thanks to John Shackleton for doing that. And I also want to thank a couple of people that have made financial contributions in the last couple of days. A very generous £100 donation made over the weekend. Thank you very much to everybody that has done that. Right, moving on. Who elects our judges? Are they elected? I don't think so. Who appoints them is perhaps the appropriate question. And in fact, this article in the Telegraph really sort of calls into question the quality of those appointments. And once again, so here we have Judicial Conduct Investigations Office have said that 4 judges have left their roles after what is described as wholly unacceptable conduct. So they've been using official computers to watch pornography. I do wonder about people that aren't able to even wait until they get home before they do this kind of thing. So this was Lord Thomas of Kim. It's a Welsh word. I do apologise. I can't even pronounce that. so Lord Thomas, the Lord Chief Justice, Chris Grayling, had investigated allegations against the men, and they concluded that it was absolutely inexcusable that the use of court equipment was used to view pornography. Now, what they did say was that none of this pornography involved children, so that's one thing at least, but nonetheless, 4 judges having to resign. Well, what can you say about that? In the meantime, well, this is the NSPCC head, Peter Wanless, speaking out over Lord Janner. So the pressure on the Janner thing continues. And once again, an article here starting, pressure is mounting. Well, I can't imagine how pressure could mount much further, because it really is, it must be at breaking point by now. So Alison Saunders continuing to say that she won't let Lord Janner stand trial. But this is Peter Wanless, who is apparently so angry according to the Independent here, at the decision, that he has sent a stinging letter to Ms. Saunders. And what has he done? Has he called for Janner to be prosecuted? No, he hasn't. What he has called for is for a no-fault trial of facts instead. Now, a no-fault trial of facts means that he could not be found innocent or guilty, but a court would decide the facts of the case and whether any offences had been committed. So no innocence or guilt is what is being called for by Peter Wanless. Now, let's not forget that this is the same Peter Wanless who last November was asked by the Home Office to have a look into whether files had been, whether there'd been actually a cover-up within the Home Office, and of course, he said that he could find no evidence of such a cover-up, no evidence at all, and yet here we are, the Mirror once again pointing out that the Home Office had lost a file from 1986 on Janner. So you got to ask the question, what is Peter Wanless thinking? And will he actually stand up for a proper inquiry? Will he stand up for people to be prosecuted? And will he stand up for the children that he's supposed to represent? I haven't seen any evidence of it so far. And indeed, one of those victims has said that he's going to seek a review of the decision not to prosecute Janner. And one of the interesting things in this article is that apparently Alison Saunders has now written to all the alleged victims of Janner and said that they can ask for a review of her decision. Now, we can imagine how that review might end up, but hopefully everybody concerned with that will write to her. And the situation not any better north of the border, because the Scotsman here reporting that in fact the inquiry in Scotland into the allegations of historic child abuse and institutional child abuse is equally not progressing any further. So this is Education Secretary Angela Constance was supposed to name the chair and outline the remit of the inquiry in a statement in the coming week, but in fact isn't. So what can we do? We got to make sure that some of these people that are standing for election understand the implications of what's coming for them if they actually win their seats, I think is the thing to do. And in Nottingham, let's not forget that continuing allegations that the child sex exploitation that's happening there, sex exploitation I don't think is a terribly good term, the child abuse which is happening there is continuing. But of course the BBC presenting this as being an Asian problem as usual. Let's not forget that it's not an Asian problem. It is an Oxford problem. All communities in Oxford involved in this. And in fact, the Oxford's, as we've been saying, since 2010, Oxford's child protection community doing nothing to protect children in Oxford. And I think we hinted on Friday that we view this whole child abuse business as being a sort of drip effect as they just allow these stories to come out. And they're absolutely watching the public reaction to this and releasing these stories at a pace which keeps public reaction just below boiling point. I think we've got to try to encourage the public to actually boil over on this one, because we're not going to make any progress otherwise. Right, we've got a slightly shorter news than today than normal, because I'm on my own. I have to apologise for that. But I just wanted to end up with this article from The Guardian. Labour to call on Michael Heseltine if it wins. Now, Heseltine, of course, we know was former Deputy Prime Minister. He is a Conservative Party member. He's been Defence Secretary, Home Secretary, and so on, I believe. So he has done the job. But apparently, the Labour Party would like him to advise them if they would become form the majority of the next government. Now, this is not unprecedented. It happens quite a lot in the United States, where people that are considered experts in their field are asked to come and contribute to a sitting government. But I haven't heard this type of thing. Certainly not somebody of the history of Michael Heseltine being asked by an opposing party to come and advise them. At least not in Parliament, because of course, let's not forget that it was Kenneth Clarke who took Tony Blair by the hand and brought him over to the Bilderberg conference in order for him to get his assessment for whether he should be the next British Prime Minister. And in fact, they shared expenses on that trip. So I don't know whether they shared a hotel room, but they certainly shared expenses and had to admit to that in Parliament. So it's not unheard of that there seems to be that there's some cross-party pollination in this way. But certainly, I believe the first time that a prospective government has openly announced that they're likely to choose somebody from the opposing party to advise them. We really are heading for a one-party state. Okay, and on that note, we'll end for today. We'll have a guest on tomorrow. I'm not quite sure who that's going to be just yet. And I will see you tomorrow. Thanks for joining us, and have a great day. Okay, bye-bye.